Lighten Up podcast. I am your host, Nicole Frolick, and I invite you to cozy up with me each week as I explore all aspects of the spiritual journey, spiritual biohacking, and expanding the mind beyond this reality. Remember that the collective awakening can start by planting one seed, so thanks for being such an amazing audience and sharing these shows with your family and friends. So without further ado, let's jump right into the episode and find out what we're discovering today. Welcome back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast. I am joined by a really dear friend as well as a colleague, I think, on the YouTube platforms, Tyler Kiwala from the Journey to Truth podcast. Tyler, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. How you doing today? I mean, there's been so much going on. How is it day to day for you?
It's overwhelming, and it's actually kind of nice that this is all happening because it's a good reminder that we need to give ourselves a break sometimes and step back. And trying to keep up with this movie that's playing out right now is really exciting because we want to know what's going on. A lot of us are lost. We're looking for hope, but at the same time, we could all go in a cave for 3 months and this is going to play and then come back out and the result is still going to be the same. This is going to happen with or without us at this point, and so it's really important now, I think, just to go inward. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on, just reflecting, meditating, and also not getting enough sleep. So being really tired at the same time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would second that for you. A lot of people in my alchemy program have been saying that. Really, really interesting dreams too. But I think what you said there is really key, that we are in essence watching a movie. However, I don't know how you feel about this. My perception of it is that it's almost like you remember those books, Choose Your Own Adventure? Did you ever read those? I don't know if they're around.
I did read those, and I know where you're going with this. That's exactly what this is like.
Yeah, and so I feel like we are absolutely part of the outcome in essence of how fast we get there. So I feel like this movie is kind of like a choose your own adventure book where, depending on what you choose, you're entering a different timeline, and that timeline could either be moving you forward faster to the end of the movie or taking you on a different path that you have to go through some more obstacles and challenges.
Yeah, that's exactly what's playing out right now. And it's almost like what we're seeing, it's like a glitch in the timeline, which is possible. Like things can go wrong sometimes. And we might stray off course, but we're always going to go back because we know we're on the ascension timeline. But this is a timeline war. So there's forces out there manipulating it, and it's not going to go like according to plan, because we have all these channelers and these psychics and these mediums, and everybody's getting all this information. But it's kind of, usually it corroborates. Now we're seeing it's all contradicting each other. I think people are tapping into different potential timelines. And I don't think we're supposed to know. I think we're not supposed to know how this is going to play out, because whatever is occurring has to catch us off guard, has to catch us by surprise. Because if we know, like Dolores Cannon always says, what good is the test if you know the answers? This isn't just about what's happening in the political arena or even on the planet. This is what's happening in our lives and individually, and what are we doing about it, and how are we responding to it, and are we giving our power away, or are we reclaiming our sovereignty? So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're right. We are in a timeline war. You see it just in the media alone. They're trying to stranglehold everyone into a fear complex so that they can win that timeline war and get people stuck in the lower vibration that would help them co-create the timeline they wish. And then there's those of us who are trying to co-create a timeline that doesn't help. However, sometimes I think we can stray off path without us even realizing we're doing it by putting our focus and energy into something without realizing the vibration and the intention that it's coming from. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, sorry,
No,
what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I agree with that 100%. A lot of it's not intentional. I mean, we're all let's just face it, like none of us know what the hell's going on right now. I'm sorry. Like we all are getting our own insights, and we're all exploring and tapping into different things, and we're navigating the best that we can, but we really just don't know.
No, and you said it, and when you said that Dolores Cannon thing, like, what's good as the test if you already know the answer? It's so true. Like, even if you just look back on the last maybe couple years of your life, you know, and you look at one of the more challenging outcomes, and if it's an outcome where it may have worked out for whatever reason, and maybe in a way that you didn't anticipate, you would have never grown, experienced all the things you need to experience in the way that you needed to. You would have never been able to tap into the shadow work that we all come here to heal. You know, like this planet is, we come here to heal so much. And we'll probably get into that later on in the show. But let's talk about the movie that we're all watching and how there's a lot of optics here. What's your perception on everything?
Remember the voter fraud and how obvious it was. It was over the top obvious. It couldn't be more obvious. And we still saw Biden get in. It's just the movie that we are seeing right now is comparable to that. It's so obvious right now that what we are seeing, down to the inauguration, to the Oval Office possibly being a set, like an actual movie set. We have these cue drops that refer to Castle Rock, and we're seeing all this. Castle Rock Entertainment is the company that builds the Oval Office sets for Hollywood movies. And then you have the guy at the inauguration wearing the Castle Rock Entertainment beanie. You have Biden's granddaughters, the one in the pink and the white. They're in one frame, and then the camera switches, and they're not in the next frame. And people are saying, "Oh, well, it's just because the camera angle." Well, that's not true. If you take that and put it back in context, we're only seeing that short video. When you put it back in context, it actually goes to an aerial view, and they're entirely just not there. They're not there. I'm sorry, this isn't some camera mistake. Something's going on. You have Jill Biden, who has blue shoes in one shot, whatever you call them, tan shoes in the other shot. I forget what the color they were using for it, but she has different color shoes in each shot. You have the Oval Office. It's just clearly not the same Oval Office. There's so many things wrong with it. Even that little box that's like that. I don't actually know what the box, what purpose it serves. It's on the desk. And every picture of every president ever, it's a box with a red button. It's like a top secret call box. I don't know what it is, but it's not there. Not anymore. It's not in this picture. It's like they're leaving us all of these breadcrumbs. They want us to see what's going on. And it's also, I feel like it's them testing how programmed the collective is. Like, okay, it's almost like, what can we get away with here without people even noticing? And there is a large percentage of the population who is not paying attention at the level we are. But if you have eyes to see it, this is a movie. And Biden isn't even the same guy from one day to the next. I mean, there's a potential that he's an actual clone. And I think that the clone program is going to be a major part of disclosure that is going to explain so much of what people have been so confused about over the past 4 years.
I mean, just today I was looking at a video of him speaking about all the vaccines and how they're going to have like 400 to 600,000 doses for 300 Americans. It's like, what? And he's stumbling his whole way through it. And I'm like, how does anyone with a functioning brain, even if you only have a few cells functioning, how do you watch that and not question his ability to lead?
Well, anyone can, for not only that. So there was a video floating around as a compilation of comedians, like way back, all the way back when Robin Williams was alive. They're comedians doing skits on Joe Biden and his mental health. And they're just kind of making fun of his, cognitive abilities and stuff. And this was way back then when he was younger. And then what makes you think he's fit to run for president at this point? He's not, obviously. He's clearly there as a puppet, an actual puppet. Who knows who's behind it? It could be Obama, it could be somebody else, like the shadow president. but Biden is clearly just there as the pen signing the papers. He is, if you really analyze his behavior, he's not acting on his own. He's being controlled, manipulated. Him walking by the Marines saying out loud, salute the Marines, like he was repeating what he heard in his earpiece. By the way, if you notice the military at the inauguration with Biden, it was quite literally costumes. None of the military actually had badges or patches. And then you compare it to the past inaugurations, you have military generals there with all of their badges, their Purple Hearts, whatever it is. You just don't see that. These guys look like rent-a-cops.
Why do you think that they would be so sloppy? If this really is, like how some people see it, like a fake inauguration, okay, a fake presidency, all of that. If that's true, there's, you watch movies all the time. They go to extreme lengths to make sure that their medals are there and on the generals and different military people. Why would they leave that detail out now?
Yeah, that's left up to speculation, but they could be. There's so many possibilities. Maybe they don't have control. Maybe they're being controlled and they're being set up and they're being trolled and they're being forced to put on this show when they know they really don't have any power left. That's one option. That's one possibility. I could just go on and on with different possibilities. I really don't know, actually. It's why are they being so sloppy? But it's like, It seems like somebody, a white hat, is in control and it's being done intentionally, leaving us breadcrumbs. It's like they want us to know, like, guys, pay attention. This isn't what you think it is. This is purely optics. Even down to the fireworks at the inauguration, I heard a video of one of the press. He came forward. He's like, guys, those fireworks never happened. They never happened. There were no fireworks. That was all CGI. Like, even down to that, even where the press was located, they weren't even allowed to be close. They were way up on some rooftop, far away from the inauguration. Just nothing about it adds up. It's a movie.
There's absolutely a lot of questions left unanswered with everything that we're seeing, without a doubt. Something is not right. that much I know for certain. Something is not right. And it's been interesting to observe. What's your take on the lights being out? Like, what? I believe it's only the second floor of the White House the lights have been off, and the Washington. I talked about this with Bobby, and he just kind of came up with this very logical reason of that. Well, if there's really stuff going down with that much National Guard in DC, that you probably don't want certain lights on to help people see where they're going or whatever, if you're going to have military with night vision goggles and all of that. So I was like, well, that's a pretty plausible reason. Like, do you have any theories on what's kind of going on there?
Yeah, there's just theories, mind you. So we've heard that, and a lot of this information coming out now is misinformation. So just take it with a grain of salt. Anybody who's doing their own research right now. That's why it's good to almost not research, but just pay attention. Pay attention and watch the military. Watch how they're behaving. They're turning their backs to Biden. They're not saluting him. They're not calling him Mr. President. These are the things we need to pay attention to. But as far as the lights going out, we heard that the lights went out for a few hours the other night. 3 buses came, black buses came, and apparently people were being arrested and escorted out of the White House in the middle of the night. You have the Washington Monument going dark, which a lot of channelers and people say that that's not just a Washington Monument. That's like potentially like a jump room or portal technology there that they use to get to the Vatican and to get to London. Because if you know anything about the Act of 1871, there's a 3-city empire: the DC, the District of Columbia, the Vatican, and London, where there's like the central hub for the financing. There's the central banking hub. So all 3 of those are tied together, and they're obviously strategically placed on the planet because of, I'm sure, vortexes or some type of ley line connection. And I believe the monument, the Washington Monument, is a technology. There's something happening underground there. That's where you kind of lose some people. But if you don't understand like secret space programs and the technology that's at use, and the ET presence within government, and the fact that some of these people in government are quite literally reptilians, and there's a lot of evidence of that. You see people's eyes change. There's glitches. You just have to have an open mind with all this stuff when you're trying to understand what's actually going on. So if you don't, it's going to be really confusing, because you're not going to be able to make sense. You're not going to find the evidence for what you're looking for in a world that's been designed to bury the evidence. You have to connect the dots on your own.
Yeah, I think the problem is that as soon as you're certain about something, you've now closed the door to possibly exploring something else that could, and it's just like that whole thing. Science will say they prove something, and then everyone believes it. But then, maybe 50 years down the road, we find out that it isn't so, And I think you always have to leave room for possibility in anything. There's no other way to properly learn and discover what the truth is, because I don't think any of us know what's going on right now. And like you said at the very beginning, I don't think any of us are supposed to know what's going on. I feel there's a lot of different purposes here behind all of this, whether it's just us taking initiative to look for ourselves, to research for ourselves, to just pay attention in different ways. I mean, that was one of the things for me. Was I was, just watching the inauguration, not even listening to anyone yet, just watching it in real time. I remember thinking, why have they already brought him in? It's like 11, it's like not even 11:50 yet, and it's like, that was the first thing that was really weird. And then there's a whole bunch of other things that happened with that, and just watching it all, and of course watching their faces. And you and I were heavily into energy and tuning into that, and energy is literally everything that forms everything here in matter. So if you can pay attention energetically to what's going on, and we start to listen to our intuition, our gut, we can actually access different kinds of packets of information that wouldn't otherwise be available to you if you're only focused on the physical sensories.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And actually, going back to earlier when you asked, why do you think they're being so sloppy with this? One of the things I wanted to say was that this is part of the Great Awakening. They are like, nobody saw it play out this way, but how many people are waking up because of Biden getting elected? How many Democrats are regretting their vote? They're now seeing with their own eyes what's taking place. There, thousands of jobs have been lost. Now they're not getting their stimulus money like they were promised. Instead of keeping everything closed and masked for 100 days, they're opening everything up. And some people who really believe this virus is what they're being told are really upset about this, because they voted for the country to stay locked down, because they think that's what's needed. They think that the vaccine is the only way. So it's almost like it's like somehow divinely orchestrated, and it's being played out to assist in the awakening. We have been following this for 4 years, I say 4 years because of Trump's term, but we've been following this for a long time. We don't need any more evidence. We've seen it. We understand what's going on. This is for the people who don't know what's going on. And this is where we have to go inward and basically grow and evolve and step up right now. So we get to work on ourselves. And at the end of this, when something really happens, we're going to be ready.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting because you make a really good point there. It's not just the inauguration where all the anomalies are, just even with the whole C-19 and how literally the day of, all of a sudden, states that were in total lockdown are starting to lift their stay-at-home orders and lockdown measures. And it's like, the day before, we were just told we hit the peak of the C-19. So what happened in 24 hours that all of a sudden, the most the most strict states are now starting to release the tension on those measures for lockdown, and that again speaks to the sloppiness of what's going on. And you make a really valid point there, Tyler, that oh gosh, and as soon as I saw that on the time, I just saw 20:02, so it was like a mirror of the 20 and
Oh, nice, nice.
yeah. So you make a good point there in that this really could be part of a more divine plan. I like to call it like something even greater than what I think any of us can imagine, to assist more awakening. That those who really are not getting it are finally going to, it's almost like you have to rub. It's like, when you take a dog and they've done something bad and you rub their nose in the shit. It's almost like you're like, yo, you just voted this in. Now, like, let me just rub your nose in it kind of thing. And so you can actually see the consequences of what's going on here, because I just don't understand. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't they at least wait a few weeks? At minimum, a few weeks. We're still in heavy winter here in the States, right? Yeah. So to me, I feel like it's just a weird anomaly across the board on how everything's being handled. And of course, we look at, for instance, CNN. All of a sudden, their death count toll rate is like not blinking constantly to program everyone. And so you can already see that they're trying to deprogram the fear, and get people out of that mindset. But I think, from what I've seen, is that it's going to take a little while for people to be less fearful. Even when these lockdown measures are releasing and not as heavy, I think some people are still going to act as if they're still in place just because of the fear.
Yeah, that's how quickly the programming affects people. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you're willing to accept the lie as truth in your reality, then that becomes your reality. So you are living a lie, you don't even understand it. And you can't just go and tell somebody that. That has to be their own realization in whatever way it's going to occur in their life. If they allow it, you can turn a blind eye to this stuff. I know people that have been made aware of certain information, and I watch them just shut it out. They are not ready for this because they know it's going to shatter their entire reality if they accept this as fact. Nobody wants to believe that they've been duped, that they've been lied to their whole lives, that what they went to school for was all a facade, that it isn't even real science. It's not something people are ready to accept.
Yeah. And I mean, from the compassionate place of the human heart, I can understand. You've been through an awakening. I've been through several awakenings. I've been through several awakenings. You go through these phases of like, whoa, this, and then shut it down and go back into like old programs. And then you come back and you're like, no, it's time for more. You can go through those phases. And I think it's kind of like a buffering process so that people don't have complete psychotic breaks in the mind, because that can happen depending on how fast your awakening is. So there is definitely some compassion for the collective in whatever way someone needs to awaken. It's always going to be an individual path. We can't expect people to jump on board just because we're already there. There is a part of us that knows that we've got to hold space and healing space for those who are going to be going through this. And we have to remember what it's like to be there, because we can quickly forget.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It's true. And I'm not trying to belittle anyone else who's not paying attention, because for one, it's designed that way. It's designed to distract you and pull you off and take you away from, cut off your God connection and make you, they've kind of pushed the atheist agenda, and like me, I was an atheist. I grew up in a Catholic and a Christian family, having it shoved down my throat, and I rejected it. It did not feel right to me. I was just, I think I just was born knowing something was off, and then as soon as I was old enough to escape that, I just went all atheist, because whenever something is forced upon you, especially with that rebel type of mentality, you want to do the opposite, So I was like, no, that's not me. I'm this person. And I was like the atheist. And I just thought we were all here by chance, and there's no reason for anything. There are no such thing as coincidences. Everything is just scientific. And what I realize is that looking back on it now, it's like that program that they put into people, it's giving people a pass to be a shitty person, because it's easy to be a shitty person when you don't think there's consequences for your actions. And I didn't think that. I honestly thought that, it doesn't matter what I do, because I fully believed in the whole, we're just here by chance and this is it. There's no before or after, and it doesn't matter what we do. So you might as well just do whatever you want and be selfish. And that quickly backfired on me, obviously. But that's what they want people thinking.
Yeah, well, to that point, that's why they're trying to deprogram God out of everything, is so that people act from a place where they don't believe there is any consequence to their actions. And and it's true. And if you don't believe there's any consequence, then you don't really think twice about doing what you're doing, which I can totally see a shift in the last 2 decades of how that's really infiltrated the masses on a deeper level. Like they've really programmed that into the youth more than anything, but it's prevalent in a lot of media, your celebrity culture, your movies. Like you just see that kind of mentality heavily being programmed into people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was the same as you. Raised Catholic, and I think I also had a difficult time with God. I didn't necessarily believe that there wasn't a God, but I didn't go as far as you did. But I had a very difficult time with the word God. It made me very uncomfortable just because of the way it was taught to me, using fear and just the more unhealed patriarchal aspect of the system. And so I really struggled with that. So I turned to different religions. I turned to like Buddhism and Hinduism, and eventually made my way back into spirituality. And it was only when I started to unite my masculine and feminine aspects and going more into the feminine that I started to be more comfortable with the word God again and understand truly what that is, and without the programming that can come through the church system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what it is. Like I've said this before, there's spirituality in religion, and there's spirituality on the galactic level, and one of them is a trap. We know, like, the indoctrination that religion brings us, and there are a lot of good things within religions. Don't get me wrong. I grew up in it. I understand the good parts of it. But it's kind of like that meme you ever see. It's like there's a fish inside of a fish bowl in the ocean, and then there's a fish outside of the bowl, and the fish inside of the bowl is the religion, and then the one in the ocean swimming freely is spirituality. So it's like it takes you so far, but that's it. There's like a dead end, and that's where. And then there's always some type of fear or shame that happens, where they make you feel bad for what you're doing, and that's not right.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I actually feel like there's certain religion in itself, like you said, there's good things in it, and I don't necessarily feel like it's the fish in the bowl. I feel like it's the indoctrinated version of the religion, which some people would argue that that's what that is completely, but I don't necessarily agree with that. Just like spirituality, there is a lot of corruption in the spiritual community. There is a lot of deception and false. Oh, what's the word?
False idols, false light.
False idols, but also false narratives that lead people down destructive pathways. And let's face it, you can't have the light without the dark. It's all part of it. It's all part of the journey. So I feel like spirituality in itself doesn't necessarily stand out on its own, because I feel like it's been infiltrated as well. I think all things start off good, and then there's infiltration. And I believe spirituality has been infiltrated as well. I mean, I'm seeing it. Right.
Yeah.
You see it, right? You've seen it too.
Oh, 100%. And I agree with you as far as even the religion stuff. Guys, I don't know what I'm talking about here. I'm just kind of figuring this out on my own. So I'm not trying to say like religion is bad and this and that. I just know, I do know that some of it is designed to keep us kind of trapped in a box. and not only entrapped in the box, but divide us, because they have, look at the wars in our history. It's always one religion versus another.
Yep,
That's
totally.
part of the divide and conquer game. That's what I'm getting at with this. Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
clearly an agenda there, but really we don't know. At the end of the day, I don't, like you said, spirituality, it can be all put under
Yeah,
one
I
bubble.
think it's faith. What is your faith? Whatever that is, like where do you put it, and how is it guiding you? And I think the individual journey is going to be individual. That's there's no specific path, that like a cookie cutter path for everyone, and we've got to figure it out on our own.
Hmm.
So let's jump into some clone talk and get into the possibilities that are the potential possibilities of this and what's out there, and let's just have a fun conversation about it.
Yeah, so the clone program is something that I've been drawn to for a long time. I've resonated with it as a reality. Like, I really do feel like there's a clone program. After everything I've read, listening to whistleblowers, SSP whistleblowers, a lot of people's testimony, I mean, there's just no way there's not something going on. We've already seen the reports and stuff leak out into, we know they're testing, and they're testing cloning in other parts of the world with animals and this and that, but they didn't stop there. I don't think they stopped there. So everything I'm going to get into as far as the cloning aspect is unverifiable. Just so you know, like, I just want to explore what I believe to be a possibility and just have some fun with it and go down this rabbit hole. And I've connected some dots on my own that would explain a lot of what we're seeing happen on the surface, but I can't verify it. But I think it's a good seed to put out there, because if we do get some type of disclosure, the cloning program is most certainly going to be part of it. And it's going to be a reality that people are going to have to face.
Yeah, I mean, it would be far fetched, knowing how nefarious the things that we've seen in this world are, that if we are indeed working with cloning, which we've been doing for decades, at least to our knowledge, that they're absolutely working on humans as well. And anything we do know is that whatever technology they show us is probably at minimum 50 years behind what they actually have.
Yeah. Oh, minimum.
Yeah.
At minimum. It's probably unfathomable, however you say that word, what actually is taking place. When you hear these whistleblowers and stuff give their story, like Rebecca Rose or Tony Rodriguez, you can't, these stories can't exist without some extreme level of advanced technology that we can't even wrap our head around here in the public eye anyway. So getting into cloning, and that's one of the themes that comes up, like clones and regen tanks and med beds and all this technology is like just common talk for them. It's common talk. I started reading this book called The Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, which is about a trip of 12 astronauts, 12 or 13, I forget now, that went to, that left planet during the JFK era. And they went to go spend 13 years or 10 years on another planet. And they end up, the time there was so screwed up, none of their devices worked, they couldn't keep time. They ended up staying for 13 years, came back. It's an incredible story. It's like the actual log. You're reading the log of the people, like journaling their stay there. And within that book, it gives a brief history of the SSP, and because you have to kind of understand how we even got to a place where we can go off planet for 10 years and stay somewhere else. And this wasn't even part of the SSP. This was actually a government program. So within that book, they start talking about how the whole Draco agenda started back in the late 1800s. And the Green Dragon and the Black Dragon Society were basically channeling reptilians out of this cave somewhere in Tibet or something. And allegedly there's an underground city there, underground base, where these reptilians were residing, and they were channeling the people on the surface were channeling messages, and they were carrying out orders for these reptilians because they couldn't show themselves. And they got a hold of a German general who was a linguist, and he was sent over there by chance, sent over there to learn the language, this or that. He ended up coming in contact with this society. They gave him this ability of foresight, so he could go back and he could be the general. I think Karl Haushofer or something. He could be the general in World War I, and people would look up to him because he had the ability of foresight. He could see things before they happened, and he looked like a god. Like, people didn't understand who this was. The whole country gained his trust. And then eventually, after that war ended, he was given Hitler to groom. And he told the people that Hitler is your guy. And the people believed him because they thought this guy was like king to them. And he groomed Hitler, and Hitler eventually ended up abusing his power and turning on him, is what the story says. And he just went crazy and almost ruined their plan. Like, he was supposed to be the guy, but he just took it too far, and he wouldn't even take orders from the Draco anymore, from what I understand. So they had this like 50 or 300 year plan, some crazy plan all set out, and then it ended up Hitler like kind of backfired. But I think that might be like a benevolent force interfering and causing that to happen. But what they talk about is the Draco actually, like a certain large percentage of the military of the army in World War I was a clone army. They talk about this. They were working with the reptilians and the Draco back then, and the Green Dragon, Black Dragon Society. It was all part of this massive cloning program. I don't know if that's verifiable, but it's really interesting. When they got to this planet, one of their friends died on the way there. He couldn't handle, when they were going through certain parts of space, they had to, basically they were put in like an atmospheric bubble because humans can't handle that type of, they call it, instead of car sick, they call it space sick. That's why they jokingly, but you would get sick unless you were put in this bubble where you were contained in an atmosphere where you can survive in. And then whenever you weren't like going through the portal, you can come out of it and walk around. Well, and then they gave you food to eat, but if you didn't eat that food was supposed to help you not get sick. And this guy wasn't eating the food. He was eating his own rations, ended up getting sick and dying on the ship. When they got there, they wanted the body, but these ETs, they call them the EBINs, EBE, they call them EB1, EB2, EB3, whatever. They call them the EBINs for short, but they wouldn't let them see their friend. They wanted their friend. They wanted the body. They wanted to know what happened to him. Long story short, they ended up finding out there's a massive cloning facility on the other side of the planet where they had been abducting people from all different planets, different races of ETs. Just like we hear of the abduction stories, they're taking people against their will. And they admit this because this race apparently can't lie. They take the people against their will, bring them to this planet, and they clone them. And they were in these journals, they were saying the creatures that they were making, these hybrids and everything. They had a massive, massive cloning facility there, and they got to know it. They got to learn it. And all of this information made its way back to Earth. All of it. So the clone science and everything, they got to know the doctors there, and they're working with our government. Apparently we've been back there. Some of the people didn't even come back. They wanted to stay and live their life, carry out their life on this planet. So if any of that is true, that this happened between the 40s and the 60s. We've been cloning since then, if not way earlier. And I realize I've been running on a long tangent here.
No. It's great. No, I love that you were able to get all that out. Okay, two things. First thing is, while you were speaking that whole time, I looked down at the time of the video twice. The first time I looked down, it said 33 minutes and 33 seconds.
Wow.
And the second time I looked down, it said 35 minutes and 35 seconds. And I'm like, what is going on with all these number synchronicities? Just as you were talking about the 3333 was when you were talking about them being in this cave, and discussing. And then the second time was about where he brought in Hitler.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. Because I wasn't looking at the clock otherwise. So the other thing I want to say is with all of this potential possibility of these cloning programs and based off of this book that you've read, there's also, which I don't know if you want to go into, you don't have to, but you also have a special interest in this because of your own personal journey and discovery. Did you want to share any of that with the audience, or is that something you kind of don't want to go towards right now?
I do and I don't. I feel like I'm going to be ready at some point to share it, but uh, I watch certain whistleblowers and people come forward with their story and just get butchered because they can't prove anything. And I'm still connecting dots on my own, and it's not even fair to myself to start talking about something that I don't fully understand. But yeah, there is a lot that if I've had my own experiences, which are undeniable, but then there's other stuff that are memories and stuff I've been going through that I'm just still trying to connect the dots on my own. But through one of my sessions with Ivan Teller, actually, my higher self came through and he said straight up, he's like, yeah, you were cloned at age 5, and there's a clone of you working at S4, Groom Lake, Area 51, currently alive right now that you could go visit if you had access, if you had security clearance. And they said, apparently a lot of us are cloned, and they're doing, or this version of me might be the clone, and the other version, it gets really crazy. But that's I'm taking with a grain of salt. I can't verify that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you bring this clone idea into politics, into what we're seeing play out now, well, first of all, you have guys like Johann Fritz talking about, I think it's Monarch or Mobius. It's a company, it's a corporation that the celebrities and the elites use. They buy clone. They get themselves. It's only for the people who can afford it. They get themselves cloned for security purposes. If they don't want to appear in an event or in a dangerous situation, whatever it might be, they send their clone. And when you listen to Johann explain this, it's very matter of fact. He's explaining it. He's breaking it down, explaining, this company and who's behind it and blah, blah, blah. It's really interesting. So if that's true, what makes you think that politicians aren't doing the same thing? And a lot of channelers have been, a lot of mediums have been getting Joe Biden coming through as if he's dead. And then I've heard in another channeling say, somebody was asking questions about Biden. It's like, well, first of all, Biden's dead. That's his clone. And so I'm like, all these dots are being connected, and Biden comes through and he's trying to tell people that, guys, I didn't know what I was doing. I was being used. I'm sorry. This is obviously a lot more sympathetic than that. But according to some of this information, he's like the deep state's grand experiment. He was cloned in the 70s in Dulce, New Mexico. There's a massive cloning facility underground there. That's apparently the mother of all dumbs on this planet, a deep underground military base. And apparently there's a whole room of Biden clones. There's like an army of them, and they're it sounds crazy, but this has been their grand experiment. So to even see their experiment be inaugurated is like a win for them, even though they know they're losing, but they're delusional. You're always blinded by greed. So if that's the case, it would make so much sense, because every time you look at Biden, there's 4 different versions of him, and depending on what photo you look at, the ears are different, everything's different about him. And you go on there's a website called Bibliotheca Pleiades, where a lot of information on the clone program has been leaked, and you could read about some of the process of cloning. And if a rapid aged clone has neurological disorders, and if something was going on this whole time, we're seeing Biden slip up, maybe, who knows what's going on, but maybe it was just them throwing one of these rapid age clones in for an interview where he ends up falling asleep or slurring over his words or whatever. You have to really start thinking about this as a possible reality. And the guy that we're seeing in office might be a soulless being.
He certainly looks like one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's It's interesting. There's it's you have to kind of hold space for that possibility to be true. I feel like when it comes to the channeling, and people saying he's dead and he regrets this, like having his higher self come through. I mean, everyone's got a higher self, and that has a deeper connection to source coming through and knowing better. However, it's quite possible with those channelings that they're tuning into a timeline that maybe it's this timeline, maybe it's a different timeline that he's dead in. There's just so many different possibilities here. It's
Absolutely.
you just never know. And that's the thing, like the more knowledge you have, the more you and I want to say not just the more knowledge you have, but the more you hold space for nothing to be concrete and allow the knowledge to kind of play together without overwhelming yourself, that kind of allows things to come more into view, a picture for you to come up with probabilities,
Hmm.
And I think what you're talking about is obviously it's a possibility if we're already doing it with animals.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like I said earlier, none of this is verifiable. This is stuff I explore, and I'm not stating any of this stuff as fact. It really interests me. I just don't know why it interests me so much, this whole clone program. And then Johann Fritz, again, he talks about how a lot of these celebrities are actually clones, and their real version is working in the programs. Like in particular, he talks about Kevin Spacey because he has firsthand knowledge of this. He said Kevin Spacey here on Earth is a clone of a guy named Paul Serene who works in the space program, secret space program, and this guy Paul Serene is like a pedophile. He is a known pedophile up in the programs, and a lot of the accusations, that have a lot of the accusations that Kevin Spacey has been a pedophile and whatever he's done, Johann Fritz goes on the book saying that is not Kevin Spacey. That's actually Paul Serene doing that, and Kevin Spacey is getting blamed. And he explains that he just starts going into this stuff. It's like, what is going on? Like, this world is, if this is true, you have to start thinking about everybody now. Everybody who's committing these crimes and doing this stuff, are they actually doing it? Or is it a clone of them doing it? And then they're taking a hit. Like, I don't know. My mind goes all over the place with this.
It totally can if you, again, like I said, like if you allow yourself to get overwhelmed with all the
Yeah.
information, then it starts to work against you.
Mhm.
But I think what is important is that if you have an open enough mind where you're like, well, if I look at some of the facts that I know I can verify, for
Mhm.
instance, we're cloning animals and we've been so for a while,
Yeah.
then this is very much something that could be possible. So if it's possible, then leaving the door open where you're just having enough discernment active that when things are happening, you're able to pick up on, like, for lack of a better word, glitches, okay,
Mhm.
and what we would see in our reality as normal,
Mhm.
and allow that to just kind of go right into the intuitive gut to first feel into it. Not logic. You can't think this stuff through because
Yeah.
you'll just make yourself crazy. But if it resonates, there might be something there. If it doesn't resonate, it's probably okay to just kind of move on.
Yeah.
And I think that's where what would be so great for us as a collective is just to at least turn the discernment dial up a little bit,
Mhm.
and start questioning everything.
Yeah.
You should be questioning everything because clearly just looking at everything that's just happened in the last few months, things literally, like you said, happening before our eyes, video footage being shown, and still no one's like saying that it happened.
Yeah.
It's like I'm literally watching it on security camera footage happening, and all those who are supposed to verify it are or certify it are just saying are completely ignoring it. They're just
Yeah.
completely ignoring it. So I just think we need to have better discernment and at least have the discernment dial turned up enough so that we can ask bigger questions.
Yeah. And I don't marry myself to any of these because, like you said, I very much have. I've been burned before by the whole timeline game. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
things. A lot of stuff could be happening on different timelines, and I have a really interesting story about that. But uh,
Well, you want to go into
yeah, I
it?
just well, there's so much I want to go into, but I do want to. While we're on this crazy topic, while everybody thinks I'm crazy and your audience is checking out right now, uh,
No, that's
one
not
of
that's not my audience. That's not your audience. That's
one
not
of the
happening.
other things I wanted to bring up about this clone, which I thought was interesting, and I wasn't trying to get this corroborated, but I listened to certain things and videos and certain information, was about the potential of Trump being a clone. Uh, and I heard it once, and then I was listening to a video that I heard it again, and I started just getting like all these synchronicities around it. And it's just something that I had to really just consider the possibility. Okay, well, if I'm talking about these other people, why can't Trump be a clone either? And one of these channelings said that Trump has not made a public appearance in the past 4 years, which every time you see him in a rally or wherever in public, that's one of his clones. The real Trump you have seen on camera in the White House with his family, because the real Trump has to, by law, he has to be the one to sign the bills. Any signature cannot be done by a clone, apparently. So, and the information that came through the session was, okay, well then if that's not Trump, where is he? And it said, well, he spends most of his time in underground at Camp David in a bunker affiliated with the Q team. And he doesn't really surface unless he's signing a paper or recording a speech. But when you see him out at the rallies, that's not him for security purposes, because of the mission he is here to do. Like he might as well be the most powerful man on the planet right now, and he has to be protected at all cost. Just something to think about.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about it being done with one person, you have to open the door with
Yeah.
other people. It's just, that absolutely is possible. And to your credit, Tyler, this isn't easy stuff to talk about, because the natural inclination of people is like, come on, man, like
Mm-hmm.
really, So I give you a lot
Sorry.
of credit for just coming out here and talking about it with just an open mind. Like, let's just explore the idea, because that's all we're doing right now is we're just exploring the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And if that triggers people into fear, and however people want to respond to that, that's for you to like check in with yourself. Like, we're just exploring the idea.
Yeah.
And
Well, just so people know, like if somebody were to have me put money on Trump being a clone or not, I wouldn't do it, because I don't know. Like I would not risk, like I would not put my house on the line or anything if I was in a situation like that. That's how uncertain I am. I would never say for sure that, yeah, he's a clone, she's a clone, she's a clone. And just Kamala Harris is a clone and she was arrested and she's already in Gitbo, blah, blah, blah. Like this is stuff that you hear, but I would never go all in on that. It's just
yeah,
a
no,
theory. It's
yeah.
just a theory, but I'm just talking about it. And when I talk about it, I realize it comes out as fact, but I'm not trying to portray it that way.
No, I know. And you've already stated that several times here.
Yeah.
I think here's the thing: you cannot advance as a society if you're not willing to discuss the things that are unknown. If you're not willing to have conversations about them, no matter how crazy they may sound, inventions do not come from conversations about things we already know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just not how it works. So if you're scared to have these conversations or even think about it, that's cool. That's your thing. Like, fine. But there are minds who want to explore the possibilities, and that's what we're doing here. So,
Yeah.
and speaking of possibilities, let's talk about the healing potential of what is kind of coming through for the collective right now and humanity as a whole, and on an individual level too. Like, let's get into some healing here to close out the show.
Okay, but I kind of got me excited about wanting to tell that story.
Oh, the timeline story.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, you're right. I'm so glad you said that. Okay, pause on the healing. Pause on the healing.
It's this. If you guys don't think I'm crazy already, I still don't believe this happened in my life. But I worked with this guy for years in construction. We carpooled together, everything. he ended up working for a different company, but I still knew him on Facebook and stuff. We could talk. And I heard from somebody that one day he gets all these black government vehicles, SUVs, show up at work. They escort him off the job. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows why. He starts making all these posts on Facebook like he's gone crazy. He's saying um, Obama's the Antichrist, blah, blah, all this stuff about Trump being like a prophet and all this stuff. He just flips the switch. All this stuff back before my awakening, like back before I knew what a timeline was or anything. So I was the only, everyone was like unfollowing and blocking him. And I was giving him a chance on Facebook. I was like, man, I know Larry. God, this is Larry. Like, come on. Like, I'm just going to give him a chance. He's going through something. And I just kind of monitored his posts, and I would comment every once in a while just to kind of make him feel like he wasn't crazy, even though it very much appeared that way. So one morning I woke up, and I hadn't seen him for years, mind you. I woke up and decided I'm going to take my dog for a walk at this certain park today. I go to the park, I pull up, park, and I look over, and he's sitting there in his truck. And he goes, hey, you showed up. And I said, what do you mean I showed up? He goes, you don't think you ended up here by accident next to me, did you? I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes on to tell me that he's been recruited to go to Mars and to go spend time on this Mars, to go to this Mars program. And he's telling me, yeah, he's like, I'm being monitored all the time. He's like, they're listening to us right now by satellite. And he goes, look over there, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, that guy has an earpiece and stand next to the tree. And I look over, and sure enough, there's a guy over there messing with his, like, looks like he's messing with an earpiece. And I'm like, what am I in the middle of right now? Like, what's going on? And he's telling me all this crazy stuff I didn't understand about the whole Trump thing and all this, everything that's going to happen. And I was like, where did you get all this information? He's like, it's like a download. He couldn't explain it. He goes, I don't know. I don't know where it's coming from. So he tells me, so I started actually meeting up with him daily and just listening to him talk. And he kept saying, he kept being real suspicious. He's like, why are they letting you talk to me? And I said, what do you mean? He's like, everyone I get close to right now, they pull out of my life. His wife, his kids, everybody has restraining orders. He's willingly homeless. He has money in the bank account. He's sleeping out of his car. And he kept asking me all the time, why are they letting you talk to me? He's like, what? And then he was getting suspicious of me. He's like, what do you know? I'm like, what do you mean? I don't know. And he starts telling me about timelines. And he's like, yeah, you see how, he goes, there's so many different timelines playing out. You saw how there's 2 covers for this NHL video game as the St. Louis Blues. They had, one of them had Ryan Reeves, one of the players on the cover. And he goes, the reason you saw 2 covers is because there's always 2 timelines and they don't know. So they have to make 2 covers for whatever team ends up winning the Stanley Cup. In that timeline, whatever timeline you end up going on. He goes, so this other cover is, he goes, there's another timeline where the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup and this happened. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know? And I never thought about that even being a possibility or him being right until now. You know, until now I'm understanding these timelines. But anyway, he ends up, so many things happen. This story could take like 3 episodes. So many things happened that are just absolutely insane that I don't know. He kept like telling me what I needed. He put me, like, he literally put me, he's like, yeah, there's this lady, she's a time traveler. She lives under, she's acting as a homeless person under this bridge, but this is where we're going to go. This is where the ship is going to come. And this is where we go to Mars. And he wanted me to pack a bag. He told me exactly what to bring and how and when it was going to happen. He kept telling me exactly the date. He was like trying to get me to go with him. And I'm like, Larry, time out. I'm not going to Mars. Like, I don't even know what's going on. So much happens. I have to cut it short because I'll be here forever. But long story short, I come home from work one day and he's in my house, sleeping on my couch. He didn't break in. My back door was open. I scared the shit out of me. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, where's your truck at? And he's like, oh, it's parked way at some other building or something. He goes, they're after me. And I'm not lying. There was black vehicles driving through my subdivision, blacked out license plates. And my dogs don't even bark at vehicles, but they're barking at these cars going by. And he's like, I need you to take me to my truck. He goes, I'm leaving tomorrow. You're never going to see me again. I'm like, okay. So I took him to his truck, and he literally said, all right. He's like, good luck. He goes, I'll see you on the other side. And to this day, he has disappeared. He is gone. There's no obituary. Nobody knows what happened to him. I've had friends and coworkers, people look and try and locate Larry. Nobody knows what happened to him.
Wow.
Yeah. And I cut a lot out of that story. It was one of the craziest times of my life, actually.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, well, first of all, it's it's so you, Tyler, to be so compassionate and give someone a chance when everyone else is like shutting the person down. Like that's totally your nature, which I love. Uh, with everything that you and I know, and our from our own personal experiences, as well as people who we've had on our shows and heard from what their experience. Some of those people have become good friends of ours, you know, and you get to know them, and you know they're not shitting, they're not lying about this stuff, you know, and
Yeah.
it's like it's I would tend to believe that absolutely there was probably, I wouldn't say all of it was probably true, but I would say a large majority of that was probably true.
Well, I didn't believe this is like years ago. And then it wasn't until later I kind of learned about Laura Eisenhower and her
Yeah.
being recruited to go to Mars.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second, like, so somebody else, like this has happened with somebody else. I started connecting some dots, and it was just, he was explaining to me mind control, how it all worked. I mean, he just all of a sudden knew everything. It was like he was just instantly downloaded. He would just sit there and we would talk for hours. He would
Wow.
explain to me the techniques they use, how they're programming us, what they're doing, who's evil, who's not even human. He was just telling me everything.
Wow.
I don't know anything. I don't know. It sounds like a movie, and I can't even believe it was a chapter in my life.
Well, to me, it sounds like you and Larry had some sort of soul contract where he was part of your awakening, you know,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
there's no way that you can go through that experience and not be awakening, you know, like to some
Yeah,
degree.
exactly.
That's
Uh,
wild. Well, thanks for sharing that.
so we can get into some healing if you want. I don't know how much time we have left.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time. We're just at the hour mark, but we can go. I'd like for us to talk a little bit about healing because that's what's most important right now. And I think sometimes we forget about that. We get distracted with everything else that's kind of going on in front of us. Like it's just a movie. But if it's just a movie and we're the projector, well, then the best way to change the movie is to change what's inside.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, what's been your journey with all of this, and what's your advice for everyone?
Well, my advice is the cliche advice that we've been giving everybody during this whole movement is to go inward. But I mean that even more now than I used to when I said it back then. I understand it even more now because I understand that um, we can try and help and heal and save and be of service to others as all day long. But if we aren't taking care of ourselves, we aren't even being of service to ourselves, much less anyone else. You can't pour from an empty glass. So I realized that this is what's happening on a large scale right now. Like we can't hate we've been shown this corruption, we've been shown this evil, and people want revenge. They want to see these people, pay for what they've done and be held accountable and blah blah blah, which I get. We all have that in us. But I'm starting to realize that, if we all start healing, really working on ourselves, really going inward, what happens on the inside, what happens internally, happens externally. If you heal, the people around you heal, the collective heals. And I think that this darkness, these people, these dark, unthinkable things that these people do, and these black budget programs, it's just horrible things that we're learning about. I think the darkness, these people incarnate here to heal, to go do this stuff, but they're creating their own karma, and they're starting themselves on a healing path. So I feel like by us healing ourselves, we are actually healing them, be helping heal them. This is all one giant it's just one big giant, I don't want to say game, but it's I don't even know how to put into words what I'm thinking, but I feel like
Yeah.
it's if we collectively heal, we're going to heal the collective. We're going to heal even the dark that are here, because we all are come here with amnesia. They don't know they're here to heal, but going through all this stuff, they're going to have their own realizations. All this stuff is coming to the surfaces. How many of these people you think are regretting what they've done now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're here to heal just like we are.
Well, I think, when you're saying that, when you're saying, I don't know exactly how to say it, you're right. Through us healing, we help heal the collective through inspiration and energetic shift in momentum. So the way I've always seen it is, or at least the way I've personally experienced, is that when I've started like through my own healing journey, which has been over a decade now, is noticing that when I just focus on me and I don't worry about other people and I just focus on my own healing, other people start to notice the vibration of focusing on self in a very loving way. Okay, this isn't like selfish in the ego way. This is loving, healing energy. And they notice it because you're different. You're carrying a different vibration. People may not understand it consciously, what they're noticing. They just know something's different and they kind of like this different. Mm-hmm. They're curious about this different. And through that, you create a field of energy around you that is more healed. And those who are ready to experience their own healing get pulled into your field or are magnetically attracted to you because they're ready on some level. They may not be conscious of it, but they are. And that's how you inspire healing, or you're a catalyst for more healing. And when you say like we heal the collective, it's not like, and I know you don't mean this, but for everyone in the audience, it's not like we specifically heal other people. That's codependent energy. What Tyler's talking about is that we inspire the healing momentum so that other people start to want to shift within them through the inspiration and the realization that they're seeing in someone else, mm-hmm. without their own reality being infringed upon, because we're only focused on self. It's not like we're not trying to push anything on anyone else. So you don't invade their space trying to like make something that they're not ready for. They're coming on their own volition, which is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it all starts with our willingness to go within also. It's kind of scary. People don't want to go there because it's not, believe me, it's not fun. You are faced with stuff that you had buried for years that you thought you were done with. These childhood traumas and things that happened, or even past relationships, they all come back because, the old you was just trying to bury that stuff, sweep it under the rug. You can't move forward until you heal that stuff. It's just like chains holding you down. And you have to revisit some of these moments and really go through a dark night of the soul and figure out how to feel that pain, feel that darkness, and then process it, integrate it, whatever you need to do. Mm-hmm. And don't mm-hmm. dwell on it, and don't ignore it. And when you do that, you find like that sovereignty, you feel powerful. You start understanding what you're capable of. And then that's when you can start moving forward.
Yeah. And to your point that you were talking about also earlier, this idea of like looking at the negative, people who are like, just doing really horrible things in this lifetime. I think that it's important for all of us to remember anyone who's kind of looking at New Earth as this utopia land that we're all moving to. This is my take, and I'd be curious to hear what your perception is. I feel like that's a false narrative that's being pushed in the spiritual community, that we're moving to a new earth that's complete utopia. I don't feel that's necessarily what New Earth is about, because when we look at the natural rhythm of nature without human kind of infringing upon it, even the natural rhythm of our own bodies, because our bodies are a microcosm of the earth, right? That in our healthiest state, we always have 80% say healthy bacteria and 20% unhealthy bacteria. And it's so that there's always room to continuously challenge the other bacteria to stay motivated, to stay healthy, and it's when and that's when we're healthy. You actually start to remove all of that negative bacteria. You set yourself up for a big potential disaster if you even come in contact with something that's of okay, let's just from an energetic point, a negative energy, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like what our goal is for this new earth and our personal sovereignty of the planet, sovereignty of the collective, is that we learn how to be in harmony with 80% light and 20% dark, because we need that shadow to push ourselves, like to help us grow. Otherwise, what are we here for? That's my personal take.
Well, your whole bacteria theory, a good analogy for that is why a white man can't go visit some tribe in the Amazon who has never had any outside human contact, because we have an immunity, they don't. We can be carrying a simple bacteria on us that could be a disease for them. And that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah. Or you go sound like, it's like, I remember I went to Bali and within a few days I had the Bali belly and I'm like, oh, this isn't good, And it's just because it was a completely foreign environment. And so I personally just would like to throw out that idea. Again, I may be wrong, but this is just my personal take on it, that we need to leave room for the shadow. I don't think this planet is designed to be in a utopia kind of sense where there is no negative influence whatsoever. I just feel like that is completely out of alignment with everything we learn on our own personal journey.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very much like this is a healing planet. And everybody's here to heal. That's like that. We can all collectively agree on that, which is why I think even the dark come here to heal. And that's just something to remember, or just to think about. And to go back to what you said about this utopian version of the new earth, coming into my awakening, I very much thought that was a real place. And I was waiting for this big event to happen, and whatever, nothing happened, only to be let down and forced to go inward and like realize yet again I was giving my power away to something else. I think it's a possibility, and that place probably does exist somewhere, but I don't think there's going to be a solar event and all of a sudden the earth is going to be a utopian society and we're going to be speaking telepathically and what am I saying? Levitating. I think it's all possible and we can get there, but I think this new earth it's more of a shift in frequency. It's more of a shift in vibration. It's not going to be something so visible at first, but as we move into it, you're just going to know that you're on a timeline, a positive timeline.
Yeah, I was told that the solar flash is not going to be this collective event that everyone thinks is coming. I mean, when I kind of came into my awakening in 2016, I followed along that narrative and I was like, oh, it's just the solar flash. Yeah. And I then realized, I don't know about this because it was called last year and now it's this year. And they always say it's going to come on the December the 21 portal or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I was told, and I can't remember if this was a channeled thing that came through me or was in my meditation. I think it was meditation. I was spoken to by my guides, and they showed me the solar flash, but they showed it happening within me, not outside of me. And they said, you didn't actually think there was going to be a solar flash outside of you. The solar flash is happening within everyone. And when I think about the sun, right, our solar sun, that represents clarity. That represents truth. The moon represents confusion and shadow. And so that solar flash is really just the awakening within you coming to light. And each and every one of us experience that solar flash, I believe, moment to moment and in varying phases where you have high moments of awakening.
Yeah. I I think I might have actually experienced something like that during the first time when this was supposed to happen in 2018, March 2018, whenever that information was going out. Well, I was sleeping on my couch and I had this crazy experience, a real vivid experience that this event was happening and everything became completely white. I mean, bright white, like blinding white, like everything outside. It came in my window and it just blanketed me with this weight and I couldn't move. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, like I didn't even know if I thought this was really going to happen, but it's happening. And it was so intense and I'm feeling all this pressure. And then I woke up on the couch. I was sleeping, but it was just like this. And I think back to that moment. I'm like, maybe that's what you were talking about. Maybe something happened within me at that time. And maybe a lot happened to a lot of people at that time, but we were just looking for something else.
Yeah, and okay, so I just received a download while you were talking that they want us to bring our attention to, for instance, when we hear like different QHHT kind of sessions and what people are seeing, and a lot of people see the solar flash and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
They want us to remember not to take things so literally, just like the Bible is not meant to be taken so literally.
Mm-hmm.
That how we're fed information a lot of the times is through symbology and imagery, and to allow that message to come in and not it be so literal that it's going to physically happen around you, but be experienced more on an internal level.
Yeah. And I will add to give another spin on this, as if the solar flash were a reality, something, a physical event. Uh, During my session with Ivan Teller, he was on your show. He's a really unique channeler, and it's very interesting to have a session with him and see what comes through because take it with a grain of salt, but it's interesting. And some stuff was kind of like he knew it wasn't him, but whoever he was channeling knew information about me that I had never told it. So it was really weird. Like some of it was being validated. Anyway, I asked specifically about the solar event. And he said, oh, yeah, I'm asking my higher self. He goes, oh, yeah, it was supposed to happen in 2012 and it was held off and it was supposed to happen again. It was supposed to happen again this year, but instead we got the virus. And then and he says, there's another potential timeline for it to happen in like another 10 years, but it's no longer needed because there was a decision. He said there was a decision that was being made between either a meteor impact, like an asteroid, some type of impact, a solar event, or this virus. And they said the virus would have the least amount of casualties and still have the same effect when they looked at it. And so he said the virus is serving the same effect as a solar event as far as waking up the planet. And I had never thought about that. And this is channeled information, mind you, but it's something to think about.
Well, I think that there's some truth to that because I have so many people in my alchemy program who have verified that their awakening started in March last year when the whole virus thing really kind of started to come through strongly.
And really quick, just to interject, really wild thoughts here. Do you remember on November 4th, on the day of the election or whatever it was, there was all these articles going around of this meteor supposed to hit on that day. And we're all like, oh, of course, here's another false flag. They're really going to try and send a meteor here on that day. So it's not even like that was that far off because we were seeing articles. They were talking about this. Michael Sala was talking about this stuff.
Yeah. There could have been, you're absolutely right. It's quite possible there could have been timelines where that's actually was needed and not needed. Like where we are right now.
Yeah.
It's all interesting. Wow. Well, this has been fun, Tyler. I'm glad that you were able to come on and share all of just like a lot of the stuff you've been kind of researching, thinking about, and just kind of putting it out there. I think it's great for people to keep their minds open and explore all the different possibilities. And if you're not pulled to it, you're not pulled to it. But there are people that are going to be pulled to it, and there's a reason why. Just like you've got your own reason why. let the audience know what events you've got coming up and also where to find your show.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm sure you guys see, I mean, whoever's watching this probably has listened to our podcast. And after listening to this, you probably understand why we cover what we cover in our podcast, because we just leave it open-minded. We give everyone a chance to come and tell their story, whether we agree with it or not, because who knows what they have to say that might affect somebody else. And honestly, we're learning at the same time. Doing this show has probably been more helpful to me than our audience. It's been a growing experience for me as well. But yes, so you can find us. Actually, we finally created a link tree that has everywhere we're at. Not even everywhere, because there's so many audio podcast platforms. We're all over the place, but we have our main links there, which I'll send you and you can put down below if you want. But you can find us on YouTube primarily. We just got on Foxhole. Telegram is kind of where, we got suspended on Twitter, so everybody's migrating to Telegram. That's where we spend a lot of time now, just sharing information, chatting with people. It's kind of healing in a way, getting in group talks and stuff. So as far as that goes, that's where you can find us. All those links will be below in our link tree. And the Starseed Adventures Conference in Cocoa Beach, Florida, March 12th through the 14th. There's not many tickets left. I know they're a little pricey, but this is a beautiful resort. It's at the Hilton Hotel on Cocoa Beach. The actual room where the speakers are going to be it's a room that overlooks the ocean. It's a beautiful view. It's not like you're cooped up in some little place. So while you're there listening to the speakers, you're going to be looking at the ocean and the beach. And it's just it's going to be a very small conference. It's going to be exclusive. Everybody's going to be there. Everybody's going to be hanging out with each other. There's no VIP this, VIP that, it's going to be a fun get together. And I feel like if you're meant to be there, you'll be drawn there. That's how I've been drawn to every conference I ended up at. Like something happens in your life where you just kind of find yourself there. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even know I could afford that, but here I am. So we're going to be there setting up our Experiencers Lounge, which we did at Camp Disclosure, which means that we're going to be interviewing or just letting people, attendees and speakers, whoever want, come on camera and tell their personal paranormal, UFO, ET experience or healing, whatever it is they want to tell to the camera. Some people like that. We're going to film it. We're going to compile it into a video and put it out after the conference and probably do some live podcast from the beach as well. So if you feel like getting a ticket, I'll give you that link too. You could throw in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll leave it all in the description. Mm-hmm. That sounds exciting. And it sounds like a great place. I've looked at the hotel. It's a great little resort.
Yeah.
It's got a fun tiki bar.
Yeah, it really looks cool. I mean, we could all use a little beach time right now.
Yeah, oh my God. I'm already really wanting to be at a beach. Yeah, well, it sounds like a great event, guys. If you're interested, check it out. If tickets are still available, you'll want to jump on it. There's not that many left. And thanks, Tyler, for coming on the show. Everyone, please, if you haven't checked out Journey to Truth podcast, please do. They're putting out great content. Tyler and Aaron are great guys, and it's a privilege to call you a friend, Tyler.
Likewise.
I'm glad that we got to connect in Sedona.
Yeah, absolutely. It was that trip itself was magical. It was like synchronicity heaven. Every day something was happening. We're like, oh my gosh, it was really beautiful. That was nice.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone. Thank you, Tyler, and thanks to the audience for being here. I love you guys, and I'll catch you next week. We have Mary Ducina coming on the show to give us her astrological seer information on the huge stellium happening in February. That's massive and feel like it's got some sort of alignment with a lot of shifts that we may see in February. So guys, I love you so much, and I'll be back with you next week.